Fantastic to see you, Nat. Welcome to Defying Gravity.
Thank you.
Really thrilled to talk to you today as a person who has scaled up a couple of really great companies following the founder in that journey. So I think it's a really, really interesting story about how you've done that and been so successful in a couple of runs as CEO that's done the heavy lifting on scale up. So welcome.
Thank you, Helen. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So tell me, you've picked up from founders that have decided to step back. Tell me, maybe tell me what triggered those transitions and give us a bit of background.
Sure. And I should probably correct that because in most of the instances, none of them have decided to step back. I work very closely with the founders,
Yes.
but we can talk through that. So I guess the first founder that I worked with was Katie May at KidSpot. And I had the benefit of having worked with her previously at Seek. And she was the original CMO, as you would know, with your experience at Seek. And she gave me my first marketing role. That was my first marketing gig at Seek in 2003. I think I was their inaugural marketing manager. So her and I had worked together quite closely. We had very common, grounding on our go-to-market strategies and our belief around how to grow a business. So the first first founder that I worked with her was with her at KidSpot. But I didn't become CEO until we had sold the business to News Corp, and then she transitioned the role to me. So having the benefit of working with her over several years, then having a 6-month transition period after the news acquisition meant that her and I could really drill down on the areas that I needed to develop as my first time CEO, but also do a very smooth transition of her out of the business and me into that new role. I think the cultural shock that came post-acquisition of this, fast, agile little startup being really sort of sucked into the bigger beast that was News Corp. The cultural shock was kind of really minimized for the staff because there was an internal promotion into the CEO role. So that transition, we had the luxury of time and working together. The next transition that I did was with School Places, and that was following KidSpot and the news acquisition. I then moved on to actually being tapped on the shoulder by Paul Bassett of, Seek founder. By that stage, he was with Square Peg, and he had seeded an idea from a founder, and he asked me if I would go and help build that business from scratch with the founder. So I worked side by side with the founder on School Places. What triggered that was basically somebody had an idea that they wanted to take to market, and they needed someone who had the experience of building a startup to work hand in hand with them. The third role that I've had is now at the moment with Vivi, and it's the CEO to the founder, Lior Rauchberger, whose baby Vivi is. He often talks about Vivi being his fourth child. He has 3 children. I feel a little bit like the stepmother that I've come in and I'm raising the child now. But the trigger for that was that Lior has 2 startups. He had My DNA, which is a health startup, and he had Vivi. After 2 years of him juggling both, he had to really make the decision as to where he would pull his time back from. And the board made the call that a CEO needed to come into Vivi. So that's what triggered that. Lior is still very much involved in the business, and we work really, really well, almost side by side, with a percentage of his time devoted to Vivi.
Yeah, fantastic. So it's not necessarily stepping out, it's a partnership, even as you take CEO. Interesting.
Very much so. And I think it really comes down to working out what your strengths are as a leader, as a CEO, what the expectation is on you coming in and working with a founder. In Katie's example, she did pull back. She exited the business after the sale. But in Lior's example, he is quite the product visionary. He's highly technical. I'm more that kind of I execute the plan, I make it happen. I'm very much focused on go to market. And we have really complementary skills, and we also have complementary personalities. We get along fabulously.
Yeah, fantastic. Would there be anything you'd do differently when you reflect on a couple of sort of successions into CEO, or any advice? Maybe it sounds like they've both gone extremely successfully, which doesn't surprise me with you. But advice in terms of what worked well or what didn't.
I do think before you go into this type of relationship, you do need to go in with your eyes wide open and really spend some time with the person that you're going to partner with before you jump in, boots and all. Leora and I spent some time really kind of working out, if we had that kind of connection where we could work together. I do think that you need to define quite clearly up front as well what each person is responsible for. I think it's really key that they support you on decisions that you make, that you present a united front to the business, that if you're challenging each other on something, then it's really done behind closed doors and you do present more of a united front, and that that they are very supportive of your management style and your vision, the way that you're going to bring that to life as well. I
Yeah.
think if you're really questioning or contradicting each other, then it's going to be a fairly short-lived partnership.
Yeah.
But you need to enter into that relationship with that established up front.
Yeah, I've seen it be really, really effective until you disagree. So I was having that conversation about how do you disagree when it happens.
Yeah.
And yours was to say, I lead on this, you lead on that. That's final call kind of is.
Yeah, his involvement in the business is very much on a product perspective. He's always been the visionary. He has a very sort of clearly defined, vision in his head of where he wants to take the product. He is highly technical, as I said. I said when we first met, that is not me, which is ironic. This is my fourth startup and I'm not a technical person. You surround yourself with good people to do that for you. So I defer to him in that instance, and everything else, from go to market, people management, HR, finance is really my area of strength.
Yeah, fabulous, fabulous. So tell me, I know that Vivi has done really well in the US, and I think that's been under your leadership. That is a perennial challenge kind of stage for Australian companies. The Australian market is really good enough for venture-backed kind of companies. US is a common first bridge into global. Tell me what went well, what were the challenges, advice for the many Australian companies making or having another go at making the move in some cases. Sometimes it takes a few goes.
So I guess the first step is to start small. You obviously don't want to pour all your resources into a US expansion until you've done a small reconnaissance mission. So we did start by transitioning an Australian employee into the US for 3 months to do a bit of a reconnaissance mission. We knew that we were solving a global problem, which is driving student engagement within a classroom. We knew that that was an objective of educators globally. What we didn't anticipate, and this is what a small reconnaissance mission really can identify, is if there are local nuances, if there are slight nuances to the way that they operate or they do business. For example, in Australia, a lot of student to device ratio is 1-to-1, and you would know with your own children that a lot of students in Australia start receiving a laptop or a device by grade 3 or 4. In the US, we found that wasn't so much the case. Now, it's not absolutely imperative that students have laptops for Vivi to work, but it helps for it to scale. The other thing was, even though we were solving the same problem, the way that they structure their sort of buying patterns and their buying behaviour is very much funding related, government funding related. So there's slight things that you would only uncover once you do a little bit of research, and then you can adapt your go-to-market strategy accordingly. Before you throw tons of resources behind it, it's very, very important that you do that. The other thing would be that I would go into market looking for people that have done it before. So going and looking for, whether that be an advisor or a board member or a new hire that has come straight out of a company that has scaled already, ideally within the domain, the industry that you practice in. We looked at things like we found a retired school superintendent and we paid them a success fee to open doors for us. We've got a board member that is an ex edtech startup founder that's exited quite successfully, and we've brought him onto our board. So it's really going out there and finding people that have done this before. The other thing is, if you have the benefit of being able to secure one, is a local investor. We tried when we were very, very small and no one wanted to know about us, to find a US strategic investor. We ended up taking a debt facility on with one of our investors now, but we started off with a debt facility with them, and that was again to try and get sort of a foothold in the US with a network of ours. The other thing is, they don't care about Australian customers. We had a really large customer base when we went into the US. No one cares. You have to have US referenceable customers to be able to really show social proof, to have sort of word of mouth referrals. So I'd really recommend having some sort of a foundational pricing where you go and it's a land and expand strategy. You go and you win the business. You target key customers that are going to be great references for you, and I don't know, give it away to them, whatever you need to do to get them on board. You need those key referenceable accounts. So it's hard and it takes a lot of time. We expanded into the US. Well, 2018, I came on board with the directive to help accelerate the expansion. It wasn't really until post-COVID, COVID really rained on our parade, with students going into remote learning. But it wasn't until post-COVID, which was early 21, mid 21, that things started to take off for us. So a good 3 years of just slogging it out, but it turned around eventually.
Yeah. And how did you know it was still worth doing? That's always interesting when things are taking a while. I mean,
So that's the thing. Post-COVID, students returned to the classroom in the US. This was the disruption that we needed. A lot of friends were saying to me during COVID, gee, Vivi must just be doing so well, because it was the disruption that education needed. A lot of education went online. We're a classroom management solution. When no one's in the classroom, no one needs Vivi. So we basically had to lie low for a couple of years during COVID. But when the students came back to the classroom with laptops in their hand, they needed some sort of a technology like Vivi to pull it together. We work very well in disparate technological environments. So the demand for Vivi just went through the roof. I had set key metrics for the board, and we were monitoring the market to say, as soon as we see these metrics start to take off, we know that things are coming back online and things are back on track. We were literally caught on the back foot that the spike in demand happened so quickly. We immediately went to market, raised capital, because we could see that it was time to pour petrol on the fire. The stars were aligning, and we just had to go hard. So we went from 3 staff in the US when students started to return. We've now got 60. That was 21. We just started really ramping up our go-to-market strategy. And I guess this goes back to finding people that have done it before. One of the strategies was go to market, and I went to a recruiter and I gave them a list of edtech companies that have done extremely well, very similar to us with a B2B SaaS version. And I gave this list to a recruiter and said, go and find me a VP sales from any of these brands. We're going to go hard. We're going to bring in someone quite senior, and then they can immediately fast track the building of that go-to-market team.
Yeah, fabulous. So that was one of my questions, actually. What are your key hires that helped you scale as you grew this so fast in the last few years?
And
that's one of them by the sound of things.
The VP. So the VP sales, how this came about is, early days, and this, you do everything. The CEO does everything. I was joking the other day to our operating partner that if we were doing a mail out in those days, I would have been licking the stamps kind of thing. I was literally doing everything. But I was doing all of the recruiting for the US, and our operating partner said to me, stop. bring someone senior on board and get them to start doing the recruiting. We brought a talent manager in-house quite soon. When we worked out how much we were spending on recruiters, it just made a lot of sense to bring someone in. They had a 12-month contract, and we were scaling, the headcount accordingly. The VP sales was another one. Bring someone senior on board who can then build out the team rather than dragging down the CEO. We've recently brought on, and this is now what, our 8th year of operations, 6th year that I've been here, brought on a COO in the US. It's early days. The thinking is that will really be my right-hand person to help really kind of, operationalize and scale the business together. So we brought on a VP finance last year as well, and someone that, again, has been there, done that, and knows exactly which metrics to monitor and how to produce beautiful dashboards for the board. But we now have an absolute laser focus on those key SaaS metrics that you should be monitoring at our stage.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. What sort of US sounds like it was clearly one of these breaking points, but Rob Newman, I spoke to recently, said he loves that book, Crossing the Chasm. And there is these moments where you're sort of stuck in how you've been doing it and maybe want to do something differently. The US sounds like it was one of those big breakthrough moments that could have, hampered your growth if you hadn't cracked it. What are the other ones for the company, but also for you as a CFO that's gone from licking the stamps, hopefully not literally, but yeah, maybe writing the emails, right?
Yeah, or approving copy. And again, your background's marketing, my background's marketing. I couldn't let anything go out, before without my approval. You've really got to let go of those sorts of things.
Yeah. So what are those moments? When did you sort of switch it up, I suppose, in those times?
So we have an offsite each year where we take the executive team away. We brought them to Australia recently at the end of last year, and we get them to pat a kangaroo, which just seems to make them so excited. Which it's all these cultural events that we put on to really obviously kind of build that cohesion between the team. But we had this offsite, and it was only late last year, and we really did have that reckoning of what has brought us to this point in the business is not going to continue. We've had fantastic year-on-year growth. In the US at the moment, we're growing, between 90 and 100% year on year. And the business has grown sort of 50 to 60% year on year. But to maintain that kind of trajectory and to really start going after, a sort of a different set of customers, things were going to have to change. So I kind of kicked off a growth initiative discussion that's been happening over the last 6 months about what are the key things that we need to do now to either shake up the business and be thinking further at that kind of 5-year horizon, or start to look at other geographies and start to look at expansion, but in a really different format. So not where you have a go-to-market team all over again and you put them on the ground and you have that repeatable, scalable sales model. That absolutely is working for us in the US, and it's working for us in the UK. But to go further afield and faster, what does that look like? And some of the growth initiatives that we came out with, the app hadn't been internationalized. That was a no-brainer. We've done that. In terms of moving from, we're a hardware-enabled software solution, we're now going to move to a software-only play now that sort of technology is kept up in the classroom. And then what does that mean to our traditional model, and how can we look at various distribution partnerships? So we would never have been able to have that conversation a few years ago when it was literally just, we're trying to build that repeatable, scalable model. As you say, that's got us, that the early penetration into the US market, but for us to take it to the next level, and we're targeting 50 million ARR in the next couple of years. What does that look like? So it involves partnerships, involves distribution, and involves much faster expansion. For me personally, I guess you do need to know your limitations as a person. I was entering completely uncharted territory that I hadn't really been exposed to before either. It was a time last year that we started to look at the executive team, the leadership team, and building out the skill set and the abilities within the executive team. And that then led us to bring on, for example, the COO role that we've created. So I guess my own personal control freak nature has really had to start to let go of certain things, start to see, my strengths and my limitations, and bring more people on board so that we can take the business in to the next level completely.
And did you get any help to sort of change that way of working? Did you get a coach? Did you use a mentor in terms of your advice for sort of how you make a transition like that? It's a classic transition and it's easier said than done.
No, so I've been really, really lucky in that I've got some incredible mentors. I mean, Katie May, she's on my board now. She's a board member of Vivi. So she's been a mentor for years. Paul Bassett, I still keep in contact with, and we meet regularly as well. So I've had some really, really strong mentors so I haven't had an executive coach. I kind of feel like that they've been my executive coaches to date. We did bring a growth advisory consultant in for 12 months last year, about 18 months really, and they started kind of picking apart how we were setting our goals and objectives, how we were measuring OKRs, all of that sort of stuff. We definitely had that person come on board for 18 months, and they were very good at sort of like putting the business into maybe a little bit of a more maturity in terms of the way that we were doing things. We run fast, we innovate quite quickly, but at some stage someone does need to come in and kind of really introduce new processes and platforms and all the rest of it. So all the sticky tape and rubber bands you've been living with for so long really need to start to come to maturity as well. So that's definitely happened in the last 12 months. And it's been a bit of a trade-off that you have to really sit back and think about where you're going to invest in the business. Are you going to put money and resources and people into those things that feel a little bit boring because you can't always see the direct impact from it, but it's just a part of a business maturing and growing. So Growth Advisor absolutely helped for the 18 months. And then we've got 2 lead investors. One is an EdTech specific investor, which is Quad Partners that are New York based, and they're our lead investor. They've been very good at opening the network for us for EdTech in the US. But we've also got a company called Riverside Acceleration Capital, and they were the ones that we took the debt facility with. They then became an investor with one of our rounds. They assign an operating partner to you, and I meet with that operating partner fortnightly. And honestly, there is nothing that person can't answer. If I pose a business question to them, or we kind of weigh up pros and cons about doing something, he has been an exceptional sounding board for me, not only for me but for the business as well.
Yeah. Can I just, forgive me diving in, you can say no, but the growth advisory and that operating partner, their backgrounds, they've done it before. Are they ex-CEOs? Are they ex?
The growth advisory is a local person here. He's an ex-executive that has definitely been there and done it before. I guess the only limitation with that was that there wasn't a sound understanding of SaaS and building a SaaS business. So he was applying business principles to us, which is where the whole OKR setting came in, measuring against KPIs, which we were doing, but possibly not very effectively. So he was just more of how to introduce cadence and accountability more at a leadership team, not just executive, but the leadership team, the management team, which was great. So that really worked on strengthening that up. The operating partner, he's an ex-CEO. He's from the UK. He was from a company that expanded into the US. He's had 2 unicorns that he's led before. He's got an incredible network in the US, but he's been a 2-time CEO of an incredibly successful B2B SaaS business. So, when you talk specifics about, anything from capped LTV to, sales comp and how to incentivize the best behavior in a SaaS sales.
Yes.
It's quite specific and it's quite niche. And I think unless you've been there and you understand that terminology and sort of, those theories, because there's a lot of theories in building a SaaS business, then it's not your standard business growth.
No, superb. It sounds like you've used these mentors and external people incredibly well, Nat. Okay, what is we'll end on, this has just been wonderful, thank you. Your number one piece of advice for a scale-up CEO?
So like practical advice or from the
Maybe
heart
one.
advice?
Yeah, both maybe.
I mean, from a practical
Like
perspective, and if anything I've learned over, the four, well, this is my fourth year startups that I've been involved in, is product market fit. If you do not have product market fit early, and that was very elusive to us at school places, and we chased it and we pivoted and we raised, and it was quite elusive. One of the things that really sold me on Vivi, when I kind of got the tap about Vivi, was I had a look at the product demo, and it is compelling. So you really have to be passionate about the product. You have to find product market fit quite quickly. Unit economics, all of that. I mean, that would be my business advice, is to be looking at that very early in the piece.
yes.
Product market fit, the unit economics making sense, but also you're building something that is able to be scaled. If it's heavily manual, it's not automated. So that's my business advice.
Yes.
My personal advice for anyone, looking at joining a startup or leading a startup, or studying their own thing on the side, is, and this sounds very contrite, but choose happiness. Life is just too short to be hating something that you're doing, or to be, and when you are involved in a startup, I mean, it's all encompassing, as highs and lows, extreme highs, but then just this angst of the lows. It can really keep you up at night, and you need to remember that you need to make sure that you have time for your family, for your mental health, your physical health. You just need to remember that you're doing this because you should be enjoying the journey and you should be having fun. And the minute that it doesn't, it's no longer fun and it's really taking a toll on you, is then you really need to sort of question why you're in it. But yes, it's addictive. Why wouldn't you want to be involved in a startup? But it's a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, beautiful. And what great advice. And you do it with such grace, Nat. Despite any kind of crazy beneath the surface, you'd never know when I've seen you over the years.
I'm an internalizer. You'd never know.
It's awesome to chat with you. Thank you so much for your time and sharing those just awesome insights.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you so much. Good to see you.